Well, ever since the climate change problematic, let's say, became clear, and that's really the achievement of very young people, of the new generation, and that's amazing, that's wonderful. But of course it holds indeed the promise of ending in depression, in disappointment, which already, I mean, certainly in the beginning now, look at the Swedish girl is trying to do, is at least attracting attention to this and saying, well, the scientists are with us and listen to them. But of course, as you know, since Trump, scientists are, that's one sort of meaning, of one sort of opinions, etc. We, the realistic economic people, we have another idea, other insights, and so scientists and science as such, whatever Greta Thunberg tries to do, and I applaud that heartily, is not in the authority position anymore that it was again in the Eures 30e, when we hoped to solve several problems through scientific research, when we accepted scientific facts as better than opinions. Today, look at the media, but also look at politics in big countries like Brazil and certainly the United States. It's not easy, and battles seem to have been lost there for opinion makers, for influencers and that sort of stuff, rather than serious understanding and dependable knowledge. And that's not a good sign, I think, but nevertheless we have to try, of course. We have to believe what in the hope that these young people bring forward, like Greta Thunberg and several others, hope that it continues, of course, and that indeed when we try and shape it as much as possible in small, self-regulated commons-like initiatives, more power to local and people-controlled city government, for example, rather than big international but vague, opaque sort of big unions that have clearly economic profit in their cosmology. Look at the Clinton and even the Obama presidency. Big money, big industries, the multinationals, they were not harmed. They were not even urged to, shift positions and to think more horizontally, to think less about making money for the elite. It didn't happen. Maybe it's not possible, or maybe it's not possible at that level. The international, the big corporations, the big unions like the United States, like European Union, you lose it there. There's lobbying, there's the direct control, democratic control doesn't work there, or not enough at least, it seems, this sort of thing. So I don't know, I mean, the Chinese authoritarian model, that's even less the case, I think. So in that sense, the world we're living in now, today, is not very promising. On the other hand, maybe it's tilting. We have to see, I don't know. And if it tilts, then you should be ready, you should really, all over the place, invite, strengthen as much as possible these local organizations, short chain economic initiatives, etc. Try and reason in much more in terms of solidarity not only with other peoples in the world, which means that decolonization should be high on the agenda of everybody who's calling himself an enlightened Westerner. It should be decolonized in terms of thinking, and there's a lot of work to be done there, absolutely. I mean, as anthropologists, or as anthropologists, we know that we're the exotic colleague, right? Still. Like, oh yeah, he's studying some far away people, and it's cute, the sort of knowledge. No, it's not cute. It's an insight which presents a mirror to the horrible crisis that we are organizing here on our side, but now for the whole world, this sort of thing. So we should have solidarity on the totality of humanity for the first time, because we didn't. We only Christianized them or Islamized them, saying if you become like us, then you're okay. No. Try and reason with diversity now, intrinsically. We're not equipped to do that, not at all. It's amazing, but at least we have some anthropological insights that we can use, I think. Well, that's one thing, but not stop there. We should thoroughly think in this holistic perspective, I think and act horizontally, like everything's connected with everything. And in our sort of reasoning, I'm not sure you should do that all over the world for every community, but certainly in our community, Western community then, maybe it's sensible to sort of organize a line of legalistic thinking about giving rights to water, to oceans, to mountains, to air, to animals, of course, to plants. Give them rights that can be violated by human beings, who can then be punished because they violate these rights. I know this sounds extremely exotic, but it's in our way of reasoning, legalistic reasoning, about how to organize your society, your community. Maybe that's a sensible step. Otherwise we won't do it. We won't, out of joviality or whatever, good humoring or something, we won't not privatize the air and petrol and what have you, and take whatever we want to take, this sort of thing. And then say afterwards, yeah, well, they'll have to solve their problems. This sort of mentality. We have to get out of this in a systematic, deep way, and maybe our Western way is then to reason more in a juridical way about rights of all these other phenomena in the world apart from human beings. I'm not sure that you need to do that with, for example, the South American indigenous movements, because they already start from this different position, that we're in there with brother bear and sister sun, etc. So already they're thinking as if this is kin. We relate it, and we don't harm a relative. We don't do that. We Westerners, we don't reason that way. We are humans, and all the rest is there to be used. So maybe regulate it then, so that you can abuse it and be punished for it, and in that way correct. I don't know, it's just an idea, and that's indirectly something we can learn from these other cultural traditions, I think. I mentioned this possible way out, or sort of pass over maybe, to a better, a more justified ontological approach, even intuition about everything, about nature, the relationships of human beings with other elements of nature, etc. Maybe that's not a good way, maybe it is, I don't know, maybe it could act as a passover. Main thing is, I think, and then I'm thinking about a small book that Levi-Strauss brought out already late in his career. It's a small book on Montaigne, Michel de Montaigne. And he says, he writes that for him, Michel de Montaigne is the most important philosopher of the French tradition. Now I like Montaigne very, very, very much. And of course he's this famous and very famous, unique exception. The reaction when, in Montaigne's time, is the religious wars, of course, in Europe, when indigenous people were shipped in and shown at the courts in Europe. Montaigne saw some of these people and of course heard a lot of the reactions by Frenchmen and Englishmen, etc., on these indigenous people. And they were, of course, like putting them down. Look at these primitives, you make a showcase of them, you show them around as a curiosity, this sort of thing. And then Montaigne, who was interested in everything, who was really always searching, questioning everything, the real humanist, let's say, in that sense. That's why I think Lévi-Strauss appreciated him so much. Any question is possible. Any question is valid. So what he said was, yeah, people say that these are primitives, etc. But, if I look at, for example, the French and of course the British or the English tradition of religious wars, this is horrible, what people do with each other. And then you look at these people, these peaceful people from elsewhere who differ from you, who come over here, and you try to put them down, and you try to say that you are superior. That's a very, very awkward way of reasoning. Now that's unique in his time, and even today, that's a unique, open-minded attitude. And so I can understand that Lévi-Strauss says, this is the most original thinker. He doesn't build a huge structure, a huge building around some prerogatives, some, how shall I say, ideas, whatever the foundation of them, of your own superiority and hence the inferiority of others, and then build a huge system around it. Look at Hegel. You find absolutely deeply racist sentences and passages in Hegel. But he's the big thinker. I mean, what is this? Is this just a slip of the tongue of Hegel then, when he starts raging about these, ill-smelling foreigners and that sort of thing? Or is this maybe part of the thinking, really? And how can you just excuse this, instead of this open-minded attitude of Montaigne, who thinks, well, this is interesting and this is different from me, but I'd like to understand it. But how few people reason like that in our tradition, okay? Now, coming back to, or continuing rather to today, we find this sort of, I find this sort of discussion with some people, some of them I know personally, and I cherish, let's say, we are on a friendly footing, and some of them I don't. Like, for example, the successor of Lévi-Strauss, Philippe Descola, in his book Beyond Nature and Culture, au-delà de nature et culture, je crois, in French. Tremendous book, tremendous intellectual adventure, I think, that he's presenting there. He tries to place these different intuitions, these different ways of dealing with everything, ours and the naturalistic view, as he calls it, and then others, one next to the other, but really by appreciating that you have this diversity, not by putting it in a hierarchy of the right knowledge, the superior knowledge, ours then, and the others, okay? And I think that's very much doing an intellectual task, which I have been doing in a small way, I mean for this one culture mainly, or inspired by this one culture, and then translating it to the people in this part of the world. And but on the other hand, for somebody in a little bit slightly different way, but still very parallel, Tim Ingold from Britain, now from Aberdeen in Scotland, has been doing with his perspective on anthropology as an interdisciplinary branch, let's say, of social sciences, also questioning almost everything. Sometimes he's almost drifting into a very, very, very personalized world, I think, where you have difficulty of catching on with the meanings that he wants to voice, and that's a difficulty when you follow this very personal track. I'm thinking of this, one of his last books, Correspondences. It's interesting, it's fine, I like to read it, but on the other hand, I think it's so idiosyncratic in the end that you wonder, why would you, now how would you say that this is knowledge that can be shared? Maybe not in the more or less academic way of structuralism, French structuralism, which is what he accuses Descola of, for example. I think not correctly, but well. But if you go very idiosyncratically like Ingold does, then either I can say, yes, I have sympathy with you, or I can say, that's your view. And that's not solid because I can't do anything more with it than within your own personal world, which is, of course, only that. It's not shared by communities and hence learned by next generations, etc. It's not the basis of inter-community or intercultural transfer or agreement or something. I don't see how, because you really end up in this one narrow street, which is interesting and beautiful and everything you like, but this intersubjectivity is gone somehow, which may have been too much there, or too strictly, too much deeply structured or something in the rationalistic tradition of Lévi-Strauss, less so in Descola, I think, but well. But this is an interesting discussion. How are we going to go beyond our experience, not only as Westerners, but then even more as purely individual or highly personal Westerners, like I think you might end up with Ingold. Now, the sort of work I have been doing and where I see kinship, let's say, with these contemporary discussions is, as I try to make clear with the cosmology story, is indeed trying to speak to as large, and today certainly in the West, as mixed, culturally mixed a community as we have now. Either we do that or we get segregation, which is in some parts of the West clearly happening. Look at segregated suburbs, etc., where you only get colored people and no whites anymore, this sort of thing. Recently, over the past 30 years, this is happening. So either we go this way, and then you have different levels of opportunity, you have new elites, and you have a non-society, or sort of mosaic of inequalities. And I think personally that could be called, like some scholars do, illiberalism in the end, and anti-humanism. You don't reason on humanity anymore, let alone on the rest of the world with humanity, but you reason on different segments, and some of them happen to be, the lucky ones who have all the opportunities, and others happen to end up in these colored suburbs, and well, it's a waste life, this sort of thing. This is a danger that's really taking shape, I think. So present day policies have to take that into account and to really work on that. But bottom up, otherwise it won't go, I think. And this awareness of cosmology also with the happy ones, this deep and responsible awareness of the cosmology you are in, you are living in, and you take for granted, is, as far as I'm concerned, a step, a necessary step in this policy. They should self-critically look at the devastations that come out of it. Not for themselves, maybe for their small circle, but for everything else. So that's a very heavy job. I'm not sure how you can do it. Maybe juridical means will help. Maybe there will be a next opportunity to, force you away for your own privileges. I don't know. But if you vow with democracy, I think we have to deal with this in an open and clear way. And meanwhile give more power to the people, to say it in a popular way, and decentralize and have indeed locally more power, more survival centers, etc., instead of the hierarchizations which is going on with the multinationals who produce something for the rest of the world. No, let's stop with that sort of nonsense and go down to earth again, bottom up, rather than... But the evolution is not in the right way now, certainly not. But there's hope, at least. Well, and I think that the intellectual work, like, this sort of things that in my small way I have been doing, and that people like Ingold and Descola, etc., are searching for, that Graeber and others are searching for, that this is along this way. So as an intellectual, and happily enough, or by accident, I don't know, most of them are anthropologists or anthropologically inspired people. So that's funny. How come? Huh? They seem to have understood something and they try to translate it, because that's a necessity, to the community here, communities here, in an anarchistic way or in a more structured way. We'll see what happens, but these voices are important. And I think if you look at the post-colonial discussion that you have, mainly starting from South America, but some of them are concentrated now in North America. That's interesting. That's really interesting what's happening there, the voices you get there. And I think even if they are rather strange sometimes, or rather hard, people told me, yeah, they're exotic in their way of, we can't work with them here. Read them and discuss them and see where are the links, etc., rather than put them away as a sort of, their ancestral or whatever. And of course we can do this in the university and other courses that we are having. It's obvious that not only there should be gender equality, when we train our future leaders, let's say, future thinkers and also industrialists, etc., they should all get philosophy, anthropologically inspired philosophy maybe, and not produce he-men anymore. Yes, that's the gender issue. Learn to shift positions there, but also with these strictly speaking cultural emphasis, like different intuitions, different this horizontal thinking rather than the vertical thinking, this thinking about interconnectedness of peoples in the world, but also peoples and their environments, etc. This way of thinking, I think, should be generalized. It's I as a professor, I had students, in 5 or 6 different faculties. For example, for about 20 years I taught a course in the Faculty of Medicine, but I was the only one. And so I was the only voice they ever heard about anything else but white Western patients. And illness was sort of detached from human beings. Happily enough, the organizer of this course, I mean, of the whole course of medicine, was very, I mean, he was a very socially motivated person, and he introduced this emphasis on social background and cultural background as much as he could, which of course changes the mentality of the future physicians, the future doctors that you are producing, let's say. They at least know that, certainly when they know they work in the cities with, for example, Ghent, small city of 300,000 people, 260,000 people. We have, apart from all European origins here, I mean European Union origins, we have people from 157 different cultural origins. Okay, and all our cities, Brussels is 200 and something, Amsterdam, Antwerp, etc., London, all of these cities all over this place, and these are the engines of production of wealth now, today, in our world, and all of them are very, very mixed. Now, if you produce lawyers, judges, where I didn't teach any course, they don't get any course about anything else but, well, the main view on the world, which is the Western view. If you produce medical personnel that do not have, and happily enough here they had and they still have, this other view on people organizing their survival in a different way with different values, different insights, etc., then you produce doctors and medical personnel who at least can work with these real people who have these different backgrounds and who are in between, or who try to make a sort of synthesis between these different insights at the intuitional level even. If they're not trained in that, they know nothing about it. They are living in a separate universe from a lot of the population that would be their patients. Okay. Same with sociologists, same with psychologists, you name it. I was the only professor with one course in psychology. The rest of them is thinking, statistics, and that's all very well, but you're educating people, You're a specialist, an expert to organize education in the future, let alone to organize psychological guidance, etc., psychotherapy, and you're speaking about only and exclusively, you're trained in speaking in a scientifically correct way, let's hope, about this white Western person. I mean, this is, I don't know, extremely strange, I think, to start with. And then I'm talking about the people, the clients, if you like, in that sense I speak about clients, and the clients you will have in your life here. I'm not speaking about going to the Amazon and, doing something for, or Africa or whatever. The people who are already here in our cities are coming from everywhere. You're organizing as an expert their school life, and you don't know anything about, So what kind of world are you talking about? And how do you think that the emancipation and will happen if you leave it altogether to these kids who get a sort of aggressive program in order to make them, to wash them into white people or something? That's a very, very, very strange idea if you look at it as well. So I think all this should really be central to what is happening in our colleges and our universities. It is not yet, and I think that's a mistake. I think that's also in terms of human rights, of universalism, human values, etc., humanism, really. It's a mistake not to be concerned about this, not to change the programs, to discuss this at least, and to continue this mission in the sense of Christian mission mentality, of we'll shape them so that they will finally come out, I don't know, like a white product or something. A white bourgeois product, that's what we produce. How can we continue to do this when, on the other hand, the world is on fire along this same paradigm, this sort of thing. So there's a lot to be done there concretely now, immediately, if you want, also in terms of policy. But that's a struggle, as you know. For example, in Flanders, our Minister of Education is one from this cultural identity right party. He's not amused by this sort of ideas. He thinks that we have to have a Flemish canon, a sort of official panorama of what it is to be Flemish. Now, I mean, come on, man, what are you talking about? We're not living on the moon, right? Or better, we're not living on a moon of, I don't know, a couple of thousand years back or something. And come on, redirect your thinking. No, the identitalists, let's say, the cultural identity people in policy, the right wing, they try to push things that way, which is away from the real problem, I think, away from handling it in a decent way, and to a fictional past where we were us or something. That's not diversity thinking, that's difference thinking, right? There are these different sorts of, well, what is it, human beings, human races or something, one next to the other. And one pollutes the other if you don't watch out, something like this. Whereas diversity is, no, we have the same broad background, makeup, if you like, and out of this background we have different emphasis, different concrete forms, etc. that develop. We lend and take and all the time from neighbors, and that's what's happening, that's what has been happening all the time. And that's what we call diversity. And dealing with the first model, difference models, instead of with the second model, diversity, that's a very, very different policy. And we see the West being very, very hesitant to leave this difference model, us and them, and us, the superior ones, and them, those to be developed. Going away from there to this diversity model, sharing things, but having different emphasis, that's apparently that's a very, very, very heavy sort of step to make. And I think that's happening now. We're living that period now. And we see that some of the nostalgic perspectives and powers are sometimes winning. That's the Trump, that's the cultural identity political parties that are strong in the West, deny the future, deny changes, etc. But that's disastrous. That will be conflict, I think. This is not a prophecy, but from an anthropological understanding, looking at how changes are slow and not easy, etc., how living together with divergency is not an easy one. If you don't do that and systematically don't do that, deny that, etc., you're calling for trouble, I think. I hope not, but I think it is. But that's really the moment, the sort of shifts that we are living now, and where we can choose this way or the other, and very concretely we can then promote initiatives like decolonizing education or not. These are very important choices that we have to make now. But the discussion, as you know, even if the world is on fire, like with this pandemic, for example, the discussions don't show this. It is as if, we're managing things, but, well, there's a flaw in the management, but let's be a bit stricter now, even today, exactly today. There's a new government meeting on how to be a bit more strict for 2 weeks, and then we'll manage, and then we'll get back to normal, meaning just before we cause this disaster. I mean, what sort of reasoning is this? That's a refusal to change, right? To discuss this. And we see in the media are not discussing this either. They're going along with this day-to-day policy as if we're still the managers of the job, but we're having a bit of difficulty here. no, let's really deeply discuss this. People are not stupid, they can discuss this. And then look for other ways than going back to so-called normal. I mean, but we're not yet there, I mean, in the rich countries. But things are happening. I mean, at the bottom, things are changing. And so let's promote these, and let's promote this change of perspective in our education, for example, and in the media. But that's my general message, what I learned from anthropology.